I thought I knew my fiancée Sarah until the night I told her I was broke. What happened next changed everything I believed about love, loyalty, and the woman I was about to marry. 3 years of planning our future together, of her saying she'd love me no matter what, vanished in a single conversation that lasted less than 10 minutes. See, I had been hiding something from Sarah for our entire relationship. While she knew I worked in tech, she had no idea about the real scope of my success. To her, I was just another programmer making decent money in Austin's booming tech scene. She didn't know about the startup I'd sold 2 years before we met, or the investments that had quietly grown into something substantial. I drove a used Honda Civic, lived in a modest apartment in East Austin, and split dinner checks like any other guy in his 20s trying to make it in Texas. But as our wedding approached, scheduled for next month at her family's ranch outside San Antonio, I started noticing things. The way she'd light up when talking about our future house in Westlake Hills. How she'd screenshot luxury items and send them to me with heart emojis. The subtle comments about her friends' engagement rings that cost more than my car. I told myself it was normal, every bride dreams big, right? Then came that Tuesday night in October when everything unraveled. Sarah was planning our honeymoon, scrolling through resorts in Tulum that cost more per night than most people's rent, when I decided to test something I desperately hoped I was wrong about. I sat down beside her on our thrift store couch and said the words that would change both our lives forever. Sarah, we need to talk. I lost my job today, and I'm basically broke. What happened in the next few minutes revealed a truth about the woman I thought I'd spend forever with, and set in motion a revelation that would shock everyone, including me. Sarah came from old Texas money, the kind of family that had oil wells and cattle ranches when Austin was still just a sleepy college town. The Weatherbys owned a sprawling property in Dripping Springs where they hosted elaborate 4th of July barbecues and Christmas parties that looked like scenes from a country music video. Her father, Big Jim Weatherby, was exactly what you'd picture. A larger-than-life rancher who wore custom boots and drove a loaded F-350 with Longhorn mud flaps. Her mother, Patricia, was former Dallas socialite royalty who never let anyone forget she'd been a debutante at the Cotton Bowl. The first time I met them was at their annual Easter gathering in 2022. I showed up in my best khakis and a button-down from Target, driving my Honda through gates that probably cost more than my annual rent. The Weatherby Ranch house was one of those massive limestone affairs with wraparound porches and enough land to qualify as a small town. Sarah had warned me they were particular, but nothing prepared me for the subtle interrogation disguised as Southern hospitality. So, Michael, Big Jim had said, gripping my hand with the force of a hydraulic press while we stood near their pool that was bigger than most apartments, Sarah tells me you work with computers. That's nice. The way he said, computers, made it sound like I sold snake oil. Patricia had been more direct. And where exactly did you go to school, dear? When I mentioned UT instead of some Ivy League institution, I watched her smile freeze like Texas roadkill. But the real humiliation came during their Memorial Day weekend gathering that same year. The Weatherbys had invited their usual crowd, oil executives, real estate magnates, the kind of people who owned half of downtown Austin and complained about property taxes on their third homes. I was helping carry plates from their outdoor kitchen when Patricia's voice carried across the limestone patio. Well, bless his heart, Michael's doing his best, but Sarah's always been attracted to projects. Projects? Like I was some stray dog she'd found and was trying to rehabilitate. The worst part wasn't even the comment. It was watching Sarah's reaction. Instead of defending me, she just laughed it off and changed the subject to wedding venues. That night, driving back to our apartment in my Honda while Sarah scrolled through Pinterest boards of million-dollar receptions, I felt something shift inside me. My own family couldn't have been more different. Mom was a public school teacher in Pflugerville, Dad worked maintenance at Dell. They'd raised me and my sister Katie in a modest brick house with a carport and a vegetable garden where Mom still grows the best tomatoes in Central Texas. When they met Sarah, they were impressed but confused by her world of private clubs and designer handbags. She seems real sweet, Mom had whispered to me after dinner, but honey, are you sure y'all want the same things? That's when I started planning the grand gesture that would change everything. I'd been hiding my financial situation for 3 years, living modestly while my investments quietly grew. The startup I'd sold before meeting Sarah had been acquired by a major corporation for more money than the Weatherbys probably suspected existed outside their own circles. I wanted to surprise Sarah on our wedding day, maybe buy us that dream house in Westlake Hills she was always talking about, plan the honeymoon of her dreams. But first, I needed to know something. I needed to know if she loved Michael the programmer, or if she was just marking time until she could transform me into someone worthy of the Weatherby name. The secret I was hiding wasn't just about money, it was about testing the foundation of everything we'd built together. And I was about to find out if that foundation was solid enough to last a lifetime, or if it would crumble the moment things got difficult. So tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? I'd love to know where this story is reaching people around the world. The wedding was exactly 1 month away when I decided to run my test. Sarah had been in full bride mode for weeks, and our apartment had transformed into mission control for what she kept calling our perfect day. She'd covered our dining table with fabric samples, venue layouts, and vendor contracts that made my eyes water. The Weatherby family ranch was being transformed into something that belonged in Southern Living magazine. "Michael, look at this," she'd said that Monday night, shoving her phone in my face while I tried to eat leftover tacos from our favorite truck on South First. The screen showed a floral arrangement that cost more than my car payment. "Patricia thinks we need something bigger for the altar. More dramatic." Patricia. Always Patricia. Never my mom when it came to wedding planning, but Patricia, like some wedding dictator whose word was law. The woman had opinions about everything from the color of our napkins to the font on our invitations. I'd started to feel like a prop in someone else's production. The breaking point came that Tuesday when Sarah announced we needed to have a serious conversation about our future. She'd been on the phone with her cousin Madison, the one who'd married an investment banker and lived in a River Oaks mansion in Houston, and had come home with what she called realistic expectations. "Baby, I've been thinking," Sarah said, settling beside me on our second-hand couch with that particular smile she used when she wanted something big. "Madison and Jake just bought a second home in Telluride. And you know what she told me? She said the first 5 years of marriage are about setting your foundation, building the life you want." I could see where this was heading. What kind of foundation? Well, we've been living like college students for 3 years. Don't you think it's time we stepped up? Got a real place, maybe in Westlake or Tarrytown. Somewhere we can actually entertain and start building our network. Like love was a LinkedIn connection. "Sarah, houses in those neighborhoods start at what, 2 million? On my salary, that's exactly what I want to talk about," she interrupted, pulling out her iPad with the same efficiency Patricia used to organize charity galas. "I've been doing research. There are opportunities in Austin's tech scene if you're willing to be aggressive. Madison's husband didn't get where he is by playing it safe." She'd made a presentation. Actual slides about maximizing my earning potential and leveraging opportunities in Austin's growth market. It felt like a performance review disguised as a relationship conversation. "Look, I know your little startup thing didn't work out before we met," she continued, missing the irony completely, "but you've got to think bigger. We've got to think bigger. The wedding alone is costing Daddy $40,000, and that's just the beginning." That's when something snapped. Sitting there in our East Austin apartment, watching the woman I thought I loved reduce our future to a business plan, I realized I needed to know who I was really marrying. Was this the same Sarah who used to drive out to Lake Travis with me in my Honda, sharing gas station burritos and talking about changing the world? Or had that woman been an act all along? "Actually," I said, closing her iPad, "we do need to talk about money. I lost my job today." The change in her expression was immediate. The bridal glow vanished, replaced by something that looked like panic. "What do you mean, lost your job?" "Layoffs. Budget cuts. The whole team got axed." I watched her face carefully as I continued the lie that would reveal the truth. "I've got maybe 3 months of savings, but after that..." I shrugged. "We might need to postpone the wedding. Maybe move in with my parents for a while." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah stared at me like I'd just told her I had a terminal illness. "But the deposits," she whispered. "The vendors. Everyone's expecting. Not, "Are you okay?" or "We'll figure this out together." Just logistics. Just the impact on her perfect day. "Sarah, it's just a setback. We can have a simple ceremony, maybe at your parents' ranch without all the extras. Simple?" The word came out like I'd suggested we get married at a gas station. "Michael, do you understand what this means?" Madison's wedding was in Architectural Digest. My cousins are flying in from all over the country. Patricia has been planning this for months. And there it was. Not our wedding. Patricia's wedding. "So what are you saying?" I asked, though I was starting to understand exactly what she was saying. Sarah stood up, pacing our small living room like a caged animal. "I'm saying maybe we need to think about whether this is the right time. Whether we're compatible for the long term." Compatible. Like we were software programs that might not run on the same operating system. The next hour was a masterclass in watching someone reveal their true character. Sarah didn't ask about my emotional state, didn't offer comfort or solutions. Instead, she called Madison. Then Patricia. Then she started Googling how to cancel wedding vendors, while sitting 3 feet away from me. By the time she finally looked up from her phone, I could see the decision in her eyes. "Michael, I think I need some space to process this. Maybe I should stay at Madison's place for a few days." And just like that, 3 years of, for better or worse, evaporated before we'd even said the vows. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. We're so close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything to us. Sarah didn't come back for 3 days. When she finally did, it was with Madison in tow and a speech that sounded like it had been rehearsed in front of a mirror. We sat in our living room, the same couch where we'd planned our future, while Madison played silent support and Sarah delivered what felt like a breakup by committee. "Michael, I've had time to think, and I realize we want different things," she began, her voice taking on that diplomatic tone she used when declining Patricia's more outrageous wedding suggestions. "I need stability. I need someone who shares my vision of success." Madison nodded along like a bobblehead, occasionally offering helpful commentary like, "You deserve someone who can provide for you," and "It's better to find out now than after the wedding." The final blow came when Sarah slid her engagement ring across our coffee table, the one I'd saved for months to buy, thinking it represented something real. "I think it's best if we both move on. Find people who are better suited for our individual goals." Individual goals. Like love was a solo sport. They left me with an apartment full of wedding planning materials and a growing rage I'd never felt before. But it wasn't just anger at Sarah, it was fury at myself for being so naive, for believing someone could love me for who I was instead of what I could provide. That's when I decided the test wasn't over. It was time for the results to go public. 2 weeks later, Big Jim threw one of his legendary barbecues at the ranch. These weren't casual backyard affairs. They were full productions with a live country band, catered barbecue from the best pitmasters in Central Texas, and enough Shiner Bock to float a small boat. The guest list read like Austin's power elite: tech executives, oil barons, real estate moguls, and politicians who treated the Weatherby Ranch like their personal country club. Sarah had apparently been telling people a carefully edited version of our breakup. According to the Ranch Gossip Network, I'd been financially irresponsible and not ready for the commitment of marriage. She'd positioned herself as the mature one who'd made a difficult but necessary decision. I showed up uninvited that Saturday evening, driving through those familiar limestone gates in my Honda while Porsches and Mercedes filled the circular driveway. The sun was setting over the hill country, painting everything in that golden light that makes Texas postcards, but I wasn't there for the scenery. I found Sarah by the pool, surrounded by her usual crowd of admirers. She was wearing a sundress that probably cost more than most people's rent, holding court like some deposed queen explaining her tragic love story. Madison was there, of course, along with Patricia's book club friends and a collection of Austin society wives who treated gossip like an Olympic sport. "Michael." Sarah's voice carried genuine shock when she spotted me walking across the limestone patio. "What are you doing here?" The conversation around the pool died. Suddenly, I had the attention of about 30 people, including Big Jim, who emerged from the outdoor kitchen with an expression that could have curdled milk. "I came to set the record straight," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Since you've been telling people I'm financially irresponsible." Sarah's face went pale. "Michael, this isn't the place. Actually, this is exactly the place." I pulled out my phone, opening the banking app I'd hidden for 3 years. "See, there's something I never told you about my financial situation." The crowd was gathering now, drawn by the promise of drama like moths to a flame. Patricia pushed through the circle, her face a mask of barely controlled panic. "Young man, I think you should leave," she said in that voice she probably used to intimidate caterers. "In a minute," I replied, then turned back to Sarah. "Remember that startup I mentioned? The one you said didn't work out? Sarah's eyes were wide with growing dread. "Michael, please don't. It's sold for $12 million. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on limestone. I turned to face the crowd, making eye contact with the oil executives and tech moguls who dismissed me as Sarah's project for the past 3 years. I've been living modestly because I wanted to know if someone could love me for who I am, not what I have. Turns out that was a pretty good test." Big Jim's face had gone from red to purple. "Now hold on just a minute. I'm not finished," I continued, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Sarah left me 2 weeks ago when I told her I lost my job. Didn't even ask if I was okay, just started calculating how it would affect her wedding plans. So I thought y'all should know the truth about who you're dealing with." I could see the gears turning in the minds of Austin's elite. They were recalculating everything they thought they knew, realizing they'd dismissed someone who had more money than most of them combined. Sarah was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and humiliation. "You're lying," she whispered. I opened my investment portfolio on my phone and handed it to Big Jim. "Your daughter broke up with a millionaire because she thought he was broke. Might want to have a conversation about values." The crowd erupted in whispers and barely concealed laughter. Patricia looked like she was about to faint. Madison was frantically typing on her phone, probably updating her social media networks with the scandal of the century. I walked back toward my Honda, leaving behind the sounds of chaos and Sarah's increasingly desperate attempts to explain herself. As I reached my car, I heard Big Jim's voice boom across the patio. "Sarah Elizabeth Weatherby, we need to talk. Now." I drove away from the ranch with my windows down, country music playing, and the biggest smile I'd had in months. The test was over, and I finally had my answer. The fallout from the barbecue was swift and merciless. By Monday morning, the story had spread through Austin's social circles like wildfire in August. Sarah called me 17 times that weekend, each voicemail more desperate than the last. The final one came Sunday night. "Michael, please. We need to talk. I made a mistake. A huge mistake." But the damage was done, and not just to us. Madison called me Tuesday morning with a proposition that shocked me more than Sarah's reaction to my fake poverty. "Michael, I owe you an apology," she said, her usual smugness replaced by something that sounded almost like respect. "Jake and I have been talking, and we realize we completely misjudged you. We'd like to invite you to dinner this weekend." The same woman who'd helped orchestrate my breakup was now trying to orchestrate a reconciliation, not with Sarah, but with Austin's power elite who suddenly saw me as an opportunity rather than an obstacle. It was Patricia who provided the most unexpected revelation. She showed up at my apartment Wednesday evening, looking nothing like the polished socialite I'd known for 3 years. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, she wore jeans instead of designer slacks, and her makeup couldn't hide the exhaustion in her eyes. "May I come in?" she asked, and for the first time in our relationship, it was a request rather than a command. We sat on my thrift store couch, the same one where Sarah had delivered her breakup speech, while Patricia told me a story I'd never heard before. "Jim wasn't always wealthy," she began, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "When I met him 30 years ago, he was working on someone else's ranch, trying to save enough money to buy a few acres of his own. My parents, they came from oil money, third-generation Dallas elite. They hated him, called him a fortune hunter, said he was beneath me. I stayed quiet, sensing this was a confession decades in the making. I almost left him, Patricia continued, tears threatening to spill over. The pressure from my family, the constant comments about his prospects, his background. I was 23 and scared of disappointing everyone. She looked directly at me. The only reason I didn't was because Jim proved himself. He worked 18-hour days, saved every penny, and eventually bought that first piece of land that became our ranch. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Sarah learned the wrong lessons from our story, Patricia admitted. She saw the success, the money, the social position, but she missed the part about standing by someone when it's hard. I realize now that we raised her to value the outcome without understanding the journey. That conversation changed everything I thought I knew about the Weatherby family dynamics. Patricia wasn't just defending their wealth. She was protecting a love story that had survived the same kind of judgment Sarah had just inflicted on me. But the biggest surprise came from an unexpected source, my sister Katie. Katie had been working as a nurse at Dell Children's Medical Center, living paycheck to paycheck while paying off nursing school loans. When I told her about everything that had happened, her response floored me. "So what are you going to do with all that money now?" she asked during our weekly call. "I don't know. Maybe buy a house, travel, invest more." Or, Katie said with the directness that had made her an excellent nurse and an occasionally irritating sister, "You could do something that actually matters." That conversation led to the most meaningful decision I'd made in years. Instead of buying the Westlake Hills mansion Sarah had dreamed about, I partnered with Katie to establish a scholarship fund for first-generation college students in Central Texas. Instead of the elaborate honeymoon in Tulum, I bought a modest house in East Austin and turned the rest into an endowment for kids whose biggest barrier to education was money. The grand gesture I'd planned for Sarah, the surprise revelation of wealth meant to secure our future, became something entirely different. It became a foundation for other people's futures. 6 months later, Sarah tried one more time to reconnect. She'd heard about the scholarship fund through Austin's nonprofit circuit, where good deeds travel almost as fast as gossip. She sent a letter, handwritten, not typed, apologizing for everything and asking if we could start over. I never replied. But here's the unexpected twist that changed my perspective on everything. Patricia and I stayed in touch. She'd been quietly struggling with her own marriage, realizing that the values she'd instilled in Sarah were poisoning her relationship with Jim. Their pursuit of social status had cost them their daughter's character and nearly cost them each other. Patricia started volunteering with our scholarship program, using her connections not to climb social ladders but to create them for kids who needed a hand up. She and Jim eventually renewed their vows in a simple ceremony at their ranch, not for society pages, but for themselves. You know what's funny? Patricia told me at our scholarship gala last month, watching first-generation college graduates receive their awards. I spent 30 years building walls to protect what Jim and I created. It took watching Sarah throw away something real to realize I'd been protecting the wrong things. The money that was supposed to be Sarah's surprise became the foundation for something bigger than either of us had imagined. And the test that was supposed to prove her love ended up revealing something more important: what I actually valued in life. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is having someone fail your test completely. Looking back 18 months later, I realized that night on our thrift store couch was never really about testing Sarah's love. It was about testing my own worth. I'd spent 3 years hiding who I was because some part of me believed I wasn't enough without the money. Sarah's reaction didn't just reveal her character, it forced me to examine my own. The scholarship fund Katie and I started has now helped 47 students attend college, kids from Pflugerville and Del Valle and East Austin who remind me every day that worth isn't measured by bank accounts or zip codes. Last week, I got a letter from Maria, a first-generation student at UT studying engineering. She wrote, "Mr. Thompson, you gave me a chance to prove I belonged somewhere I never thought I could go." That letter meant more to me than any luxury Sarah and I could have bought with my hidden wealth. I still drive the Honda Civic, still live in East Austin, still shop at H-E-B like any other Austinite trying to make it work. The difference is I'm not pretending anymore. Not about my finances, not about my values, not about what I want from life. The money is there when I need it, funding scholarships and supporting causes I believe in, but it's not defining me anymore. As for Sarah, I heard she married a petroleum engineer from Houston 6 months ago. Big wedding at River Oaks Country Club, featured in Texas Monthly. I hope she found what she was looking for, and I hope it makes her happy. I genuinely mean that. Patricia still volunteers with our foundation, and she's become an unlikely friend. She told me something last month that stuck with me. Michael, you gave our family a gift when you walked away from Sarah. You showed us what we'd lost sight of. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their worst instincts. The grand gesture I'd planned, the surprise that was supposed to secure our future together, ended up securing something more valuable: my integrity. I learned that real love doesn't need to be tested because it reveals itself naturally, in small moments and daily choices, not in crisis scenarios designed to prove devotion. If you're watching this and wondering whether someone really loves you for who you are, here's what I learned. You don't need to create a test. Just be yourself, completely, honestly, authentically yourself. The right person will stay. The wrong person will reveal themselves eventually, and when they do, believe them the first time. Don't compromise your values for someone who doesn't share them. Don't hide your success, but don't let it define your worth either. And remember that sometimes the most expensive lesson you can learn is exactly what you needed to hear. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If it resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're building a community of people who believe in authentic relationships and second chances. Drop a comment below about a time when someone showed you their true colors. I read every single one, and your stories help remind me that we're all figuring this out together. Until next time, remember, you're worth more than anyone else's expectations, including your own. Stay authentic, Austin.